All right, so today we're going to be diving into a mining operation, but it's not one that you may think. It's actually looking at how mining is being done in different ways with a new set of devices that we've talked about here on our show a little bit. You've obviously heard us talk about Helium before. This is an extension of where that technology is going. I'm going to dive in deep. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to TechPath. Today joining me is Jiten Varu, who is the CEO of a company by the name of Emrit. And Emrit is kind of unique in their own response. I can't wait to dive into this one. But Jiten, thanks so much for stopping in today.
Hey, Paul. Pleasure to meet you and great to be here.
Excellent. All right, so Emrit, some people know our network covers Helium. We've had the CEO of Helium on a couple of times here on the show. We've tracked Helium for quite some time, and we've seen kind of this application of where they're going. But you guys have kind of taken a spin on this. Tell us a little bit about what Emrit is doing.
Yeah, so we actually are deploying real live Web3 use cases. So our business model and what we're doing for the Helium community and the Planet Watch community is to deploy units and make sure, or deploy units that provide a utility function. So in Helium's case, 5G, IoT, these are real life use cases, and your average person can get involved. Meaning that if they take a unit from Emrit, they can deploy it. We look after it under warranty and services, and they have an opportunity to mine cryptocurrency off the back. But the primary purpose of the Helium units is to provide a decentralized wireless network. So they're doing a service for the community, first of all. They get engaged on that. And secondly, they are able to generate Helium tokens off the back of that. The value of working with Emrit is that we really give, especially for the retail customer, we really give a white glove service. So you get a unit from Emrit, we'll cover the warranty, the returns, the hardware failures. We give our customers special software and add-ons, and we really try and make the service extremely seamless for the average retail person.
Right. So your miner, the Emrit's CoolSpot, and we've tested some of the Helium miners here internally in our own studio. Does it work like a normal Helium miner? This is one of your own devices that you guys have gone to and developed.
Yeah,
So tell me a little bit about the device itself.
sure. So we actually work very closely with manufacturers, so existing manufacturers out there. So the unit is exactly the same from a hardware perspective as you can buy directly from the manufacturers or resellers. But we've actually started to implement our own customized firmware, which means that we will look at the data, the performance of the unit. There's a lot of customers that want a passive income, and they want a true passive income. That
Right.
means they don't want to spend more than 5 minutes a month looking at their unit. And that's where Emrit comes in. Having customized firmware, working closely with the manufacturers, and we are really a data-driven business. So we look at analytics and we're being very proactive. We are actually managing that unit remotely for the retail customer. So they only really have to spend 5 minutes a month on the unit. That's like kind of our vision and our mission to support the retail community in Helium.
All right, so when I think about how this could roll out, just so for some of our viewers and listeners that maybe don't completely understand the idea of mining HNT, if you're listening to this and you saw this on a topic and you scan through YouTube or our podcast, you probably already know a little bit about Helium and how it works. And if you haven't, check out some of our videos for sure. But with what you guys aren't doing from an Emrit standpoint, obviously you're more of a B2B approach as opposed, and then I think you also do this, you can drop this out to a retail individual like myself as well, correct?
Correct, yeah. So we started actually, and just going back to, I know you had Amir from Helium on the call, our actual founder of Emrit actually started by deploying in the local community in Atlanta, and he was real time talking to the founding team of Helium in the early days, right?
Yeah.
So we really started by deploying from a community project, and we scaled. So we're working predominantly on the B2B side with wireless providers and telcos who are looking to drive scale for IoT, Wi-Fi, and 5G projects.
Right.
They have an existing customer base where they need to deploy and improve the networks. And with Emrit, we're able to provide those fleet solutions, the quality of service that's required to drive these projects, and the SLAs. It's very important for these B2B players to give a very strong SLA and guarantee to their customers. And that's where Emrit comes in. We
Mhm.
understand blockchain technology, we understand the complex data, and sometimes with blockchain projects, things can get complicated. There can be technical problems, and that's where we come in. We are the
Yeah.
blockchain specialists in deploying Web3, and we make sure those B2B partners can have that quality service that they need for their end customers.
One thing I noticed on setting up our or trying to set up some of our Helium devices is that when you look at the mapping system and
Mm.
trying to figure out the best case scenario and also logistically where to place it, what location would do better in mining. Some obviously do much better than others, depends on the density. And
Mm.
if you do visit the Helium map, I found it very intriguing, in terms of the interactivity. But at the same time, there's gotta be you mentioned a blockchain data. There's gotta be a ton of data that's pouring in that could give you a lot of resources to understand really the best performance. How are you guys addressing that?
Yeah, so we have a proprietary algorithm that looks at the best opportunity for our partners and customers to deploy, and we work very closely with them on what their strategy is.
Mhm.
And we've invested very heavily in this algorithm. We actually have a policy that if a retail customer is not happy with their unit, they can return it within 30 days, and
Mm.
we'll redeploy it to another customer. So we focus very heavily on data. We are a data-driven business. So most of our R&D and software development is spent on understanding the blockchains, and we're
Yep.
doing that in a real-time basis. And that's where we're driving our advantage, and ensuring that we are able to give that service back to our customer base.
Let's talk about the business model because typically, what we've seen with miners, H&T miners, there's a whole slew of manufacturers that make these devices. Very clogged up right now in terms of trying to get one of those
Mm.
devices right now. It's tough. Uh, but at the same time, you've got your business model, which is a bit different. You don't have to actually purchase the miner. How would, if me as a retail person,
Yeah.
how would I engage with Emrit? What kind of deal would I want to be able to craft to put one of
Yeah.
your cool spots in?
So we have a subscription model. For $199, you can get a retail unit with a 50/50 rev share off the back of that. And this is very beneficial for your average customer because you can get into mining cryptocurrency at a
Mhm.
very low risk,
Right.
and be in a position where you can learn how the project works and build your confidence in that. And as I mentioned, that if that mining return isn't there, there's an opportunity to return the unit, and we can deploy elsewhere. But what we're trying to do is invest very heavily on software and services. We're very customer centric, and in the last 12-18 months, we've
Yeah.
started to focus very much on how we reduce the friction on these blockchain projects and how we
Mhm.
serve our customers in the best way and how we serve the community in the best way. So there's two models out there. There's a model that we have, and there's a model that where people can purchase the unit and work out how they want to do it. And there's two types of customers out there that the community is serving.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing for me when you look at mass adoption, especially when it comes to blockchain, people in many cases it's a little bit technical. Listen, you have to be a little bit of a nerd to put one of these in and do it. So, the fact that you guys are doing a white glove service, I think that's a big advantage in the sense of being able to deploy these. Have you seen individuals start to create cottage businesses in trying to maybe leverage out and say, "Hey, I'm in a community. I know 50 people. I want to
Mm.
go drop these in 50 of my friends' houses and start mining H&Ts through these cool spots." Have you started to see any of those kind of business models pop up?
Yeah, so let me just go back to your original point. In the early days, you could literally take a helium miner, plug it in, and not worry about it.
Right.
It was literally it was that easy. It's very similar to Bitcoin mining, right? In the early days of Bitcoin, you could mine on your home PC, and now you need an ASIC
Hmm.
miner with water cooling, etc. So the community is growing. People are getting more advanced, more technical. So you need to have a little bit of knowledge and experience in the space to benefit from it. So we're finding that there are a lot of what we call fleets out there, and
Yeah.
they are scaling. I think the biggest challenge is that if you want to scale your fleet and you don't want to do it full time, there is a big gap there. So if you've got a fleet of 50 units or 100 units, it
Yeah.
can be a full-time job to look after them. So you need services and tools to do that, and that's what
Mhm.
we've seen, and that's why we're building the solutions to help those type of people.
So that in itself, I think, is one of the things that for me, when I look at being able to build out a mesh network, we've looked at this. I've been in tech for 2 decades, and the idea and the concept has been there for a long time, but we haven't seen really the tool sets to really make it happen in real world use cases. With IoT, 5G, a lot of onboarding of, those kind of subliminal layers of telecommunications that are happening out there. What are some of the traffic vehicles that basically run through these devices that help serve those kinds of services that help mine the H&T? What are some examples of how this device is going to basically provide a resource for?
Yeah, so I think if you look at the most obvious one with Helium, it's 5G and Wi-Fi. So we all have
Mhm.
mobile phones. We know that the telcos can't deploy fast enough the 5G networks. So having an Helium network there complementing that is very, very helpful. On the IoT side, it's the IT industry is gaining scale very fast. I think in the last 24 months, it's become more and more prominent. And there's a lot of use cases out there from, as you said, tracking, asset tracking. There's opportunities to work closely with local businesses, tourism. We've actually got a partner in Spain who's actually using the network to track traffic as well.
Mm.
So for local businesses to help them. So I think with the connected world, the simplest way to get devices connected cheaply and fastly is with IoT.
Yeah.
And that's what the Helium network can do as a step one.
Now, you just mentioned something about the project in Spain. When you say traffic counting or traffic, mapping to a certain extent, are you talking about the element of retail traffic or physical automotive traffic or transit
Uh,
traffic?
for tourist traffic, so footfall. So
Okay.
if there's
Yeah.
a footfall. So if there's a tourist area by the beach or restaurants
Hmm.
or a tourist site, there's an opportunity there to understand what's going on and feed that back to tourists. If people are on holiday for 10 days, they
Right.
want to get the maximum, right? So what we're trying to do is work with local communities to leverage the network that's already there.
Yeah. That's very fascinating because we did some research in basically BLE, Bluetooth Low Energy beacons at the time, several years ago, that was looking at that particular solution. And the big problem is the device pinging issues that you deal with, where now you're dealing with radio towers, Wi-Fi signals that, traditional Wi-Fi that obviously is providing that. So I'm kind of curious, would this potentially in a retailer or in a tourist area, or even if you looked at mall traffic in general, a lot of these retailers are just looking for those kind of devices for those low IoT requirements to get pinging phones and being able to pull that data back. Maybe how deep can you go in terms of the data that's hauled back in on the devices that traffic through the cool spots?
Yeah, so it's not, the IoT piece, not a big brother, right? It pings on and offs and numbers, right? So it's very minimal data. But I
Hmm.
think the most important thing, it creates a very consistent network. It doesn't require mobile phones or very powerful batteries. So you have continuity and consistency
Right.
in that. So I think that's the most important piece is that you can deploy very fast and very quickly, and then
Mhm.
you can decide from there if you want to get more data intensive, what data you want to capture, and how you want to drive the next piece of information you need, right?
What has been one of the more unique applications that you've seen in these networks for use cases? Because I think that's usually the first question a lot of people ask is, what is
Mm.
this thing going to be used for? What are some of the more unique ones that you guys have seen in your
Yeah,
deployments?
so I've kind of moved a little bit sideways from Helium. We actually partner with PlanetWatch, which build air quality monitoring
Okay.
devices,
Yep.
sensors on the Algorand network, and they're pretty much IoT sensors. They're highly calibrated, and they're collecting air quality data in the community, and you'd be very surprised as to how many air quality sensors people don't have in local areas. So if you're looking at I live in Zurich, and there's a very limited number of air quality sensors, and if we as a global community are trying to combat environmental and sustainable topics, we really need to know, kilometer by kilometer, street by street, what is the air
Right.
quality in where we live, and how do we improve that? So Planet Watch is trying to solve that problem, and that's a real life IoT use case, and they're moving extremely quick in terms of their deployment and their scale. So that's a use case that we can all relate to.
Sure. I was looking at their website. Obviously, you mentioned Algorand. We've had that team on our show before. Is there any opportunity for mining in here, or would this be, or would
That's
I
correct.
guess what would be the yield that would potentially be in place there?
So Planet Watch has planet tokens. So it
Hmm.
is environmental monitoring, but on top, you're able to do very similar to Helium. You can collect or mine planet tokens if you keep the unit up and running, and if you are qualified in your hex area. So
Mm.
it's not just about looking at the sensor data and doing something with it. There's also an opportunity to resell that sensor data. So Planet Watch have a model whereby if a commercial business or research want to consume that data can be sold back. And if your sensor was part of that data set, you actually earn that reward in planets.
Ah, okay.
So there's a
Very
real
cool.
opportunity for you to monetize on your personal data that's on your location area.
I like it. I like it. I was looking at this story done by Blockworks on you guys, infrastructure provider looking to bring retail to Web3. And this has been kind of a question. You addressed it here, right here. And it says, when you talk about Web3, it's still very virtual for most people, and they don't see the real use case. And this is something that I have to explain a lot to my friends. In many cases, it's what is blockchain used for? What's the real use case here? Because everybody wants to. They understand the internet and kind of how it's evolved, but there was an era and there was a time when people wanted to know what the internet was used for. So it's kind of the same scenario there. When you look at that, how much do you think we're going to see adoption curves really start to pick up as people start to understand how these devices and also how blockchain can be used?
I think the benefit of working with these utility networks on
Mhm.
Web3 is that there's a real physical aspect to it. There's a device in your home or your business which is doing so, which is mining or providing a service, so a network, an IoT sensor, etc. And on the other side, on your app, on your phone, you can see the mining tokens come in. So there is really a personal interaction with the service, right? So this kind of bridging, the physical world with the Web3 world, and that's why I think people will relate and recognize how to work with Web3 through the
Yeah.
projects like Helium, Planet Watch, because it's you can see and touch it.
Yeah. I follow Helium heavily. I'm an investor in the Helium token. I understand the model, and it seems and looks like their growth is really accelerating. I was looking at their latest news. They've got a 5G carrier, Dish, first major carrier to deploy on Helium 5G, and then our new roaming partner, Actility Actility,
Mm.
announcing a roaming integration. When you see this kind of growth out there with what's happening with Helium and also these mesh networks really starting to come to real fruit, I mean, this is something that has been kind of nirvana for and in the ideas of what people wanted for their own communities for some time. How far do you think this can go? Do you think we could get density that is planet covering here?
I think there's a need for Web3 telcos, or telcos to be Web3
Right.
friendly.
Hmm.
So if you look at existing telcos, they really have to adopt Web3. And if you look at new business models in this space, you need Web3 ideas that can behave like telcos. So I think there's a natural opportunity to grow and scale. And I think Web3 is where people have control of their assets, their data, their network connectivity. So, I just see this as a phenomenal growth opportunity, and it's only early days. So if we can, drive this in a way that we can get global scale, and you can clearly see that, Helium has demonstrated that opportunity. Um,
Right.
I think, as a global community, we can bring down prices, we can be more community orientated, and with the challenges of COVID and the pandemic, I think the timing is absolutely perfect to drive these topics.
Yeah, I was looking just at the partner use cases, smart cities, retail franchises. Obviously, we've seen that kind of public spaces, commercial real estate property, utility monitoring. Where do you see the data side of this going, especially as blockchain becomes a much more relevant application within, especially in new development? And when I say new development, meaning new tech development, a lot of
Mm.
tech engineers kind of transitioning from the Web 2 tech stack, trying to move into Web 3. We're seeing a lot of people kind of going in that direction. Where does this stop? And maybe not stop. Where does this begin in terms of the kind of data that you could start to look at really to kind of grow networks like this? What would be some of the things you guys are watching for?
So we're really just consuming the data on the blockchain, understanding what it does, analyzing patterns. We've invested very heavily in data science, and that's kind of reaping rewards for ourselves and our customers. I think the most important thing is data ownership. At the end of the day, the purpose of moving into Web3 is to give ownership of your piece of the internet to you,
Yeah.
right? So if we can help drive that, today your likes of Facebook and Google, they pretty much own your data and they can monetize on it.
Hmm.
And I think what we're doing here at Emrit is allowing you, the individual, to take a decision on your piece of land, on your property, and monetize on that, and monetize on the data that you're providing. So, we're pioneering this, and we want to find other use cases, and we're doing a lot of R&D into other blockchain projects that can do this. But we really want to ensure that Emrit customers over time will have other projects where they feel comfortable working with, and they can decide if they want to use their own data and monetize it, or
Yeah.
use their own physical services that they have in their home and monetize on that.
You kind of mentioned something there, Jiten, is that as we start to see this scenario play out, especially with metaverse kind of playing into this, a lot of companies starting to look at that. The ownership of my data is becoming a question for the first time because people have seen the walled gardens be developed and now they understand where their data is being used and all that's becoming reality. And I think what you're talking about is definitely in the right direction. When you look at your own roadmap and kind of where Emrit is going, because you're mentioning some very intriguing things here. If you could start to look at other chains, other data applications that I could own, maybe other aspects of blockchain, what's kind of next in your roadmap for Emrit as you guys build out?
So I think operationally, we're always researching other blockchain projects. How do we bring that back to our customer base? How do we add value for our community? We're investing very heavily on software development, software tools, and apps. We really believe in reducing the friction, and if it's a passive income, and I say it again, we want to reduce the amount of time people spend on these projects, and we want to have the tools and services in their hand so they can really drive a real friction-free experience. So for us,
Hmm.
looking at these friction points and resolving them is our number one priority.
Very cool. I like it. Last question I have for you. If you're a fleet operator, you're thinking, hey, I'm going to get into H&T mining. I want to take a look at. I've been following the Helium token for a while. I understand the mesh network, how that potentially could work. What is the process for me to do that? Is it simply just going to your website saying, "Hey, I just want to order a dozen of these devices"?
Yeah, I mean, just go to our website. There's a for business area there. Just fill out the information. I think the key benefit for a fleet partner is, if you want to manage the cost of capital and deployment, we can work
Mhm.
together to do that. And we have the tools, the services, the data, the location scoring strategy to make your life easier.
Yeah, I like that. Very cool. So much more kind of a give take kind of scenario where you're developing these kind of solutions like this. It's been cool, man. I love what you guys are doing. I'm a big fan of Helium, so I've been watching them for quite some time. It's definitely one that I continue to see as one of the icon projects in blockchain that are really making, they're doing things that are actually rolling out real solutions where a lot of these projects, they take so long to get going. But anyway, it's been great having you on, Jiten. Thanks so much for stopping in. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
Excellent. All right,
Thank
you
you.
guys are tuned. You bet. You guys are tuned in over here on the podcast right now. If you're listening in to TechPath Crypto, this is a great place. You should also check out our other podcast, which is Metaverse Insider. Of course, the number one place to find all of this and a lot of our analytics on what we do on all things crypto is right here on the YouTube channel. And that, of course, is just Paul Barron Network. Just search there. You'll find us. Like and subscribe to a couple of videos. You'll get some notifications, and it will help you guys get identified and understand when we're dropping new content, what it might be. Maybe there's a live stream in there for you that's kind of drilling down to something you're interested in. Of course, if you want to reach me, it's out on Twitter at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.